All right, all good. So we are coming together tonight to discuss the CPIC's request for a bicycle and pedestrian committee for the town of Topsham. They were before us July 6, 7, somewhere around there, first meeting in July. And it was felt by board members that to have a workshop to discuss it further. So we got your memo, the initial memo that came out. Is there, we haven't discussed on our own, do we want them to give another 30,000 foot discussion over a highlight? Or do we, where do we want to go? Where do you guys want to go?
30,000 might not be a bad idea. Maybe 50.
Yeah. Want to do that, Susan, or whoever wants to do it?
I mean, I've got the memo.
Right,
Would it be helpful to,
not the whole thing, because that's like 1,000 feet.
okay, so let's just say that this request is coming now. And as an expression of resident desire, it's come before the town in at least 2 prior comprehensive plans. So that was a little background that was offered in terms of wanting the town to form a committee as a way to have a voice in the decision-making of the town and a help, hopefully, alongside, other interests and all the work the town needs to do. And there have been a small group of people who are interested in bicycle and pedestrian safety. We've been having conversations to educate ourselves to see what other towns are doing. It varies a lot, but other towns are doing some things. And so what we did is put together a very short list, 5 bullet points of what could be the charge. I've seen town committee charges be really extensive and some are quite brief. So not knowing what might be needed here, we have a 5-point charge, and I'll read those. So we envision that the charge of a bicycle and pedestrian committee might include such tasks as working with town staff and committees to implement the Streets for People section of the 2019 comp plan, developing a work plan with goals related to infrastructure, education, and advocacy, updating the work plan as needed, working with town staff to seek funding as appropriate to undertake projects related to implementing Streets for People, and community outreach and education. So that's kind of the in brief.
Perfect. So just before we go, who is CPIC and who is the audience?
Interesting part.
How about hands up for CPIC? 1, 2, 4. And just general audience. Talk.
All right, cool. So, all right, first of all, I guess, I'm a fan of this. I was trying to figure out, I think the more challenging bit for me was like exactly what this committee would be doing and how they would interface with the town. I'm also, I think in our last meeting when we presented to Susan, I'm also concerned with staffing, which is a concern, I think. That is a very real one right now. Especially prior to our plan coming on. So I looked at Sacco's bike night committee, Portland's, Brunswick's. Brunswick has a pretty 3-page plan that they put together. And that's pretty crazy. And I don't believe we can set aside enough time, or one of our staff members. And that's like a comp plan alone right there. So, I mean, it monopolized, when we did the comp plan, it monopolized Rod's time pretty extensively. So I think if we were to do something like that, it would have to be run by another consultant. And I think you've already covered the bit where, excuse me, maybe I haven't. So in Brunswick's charge, they're very explicit. I think it's the second bullet in there that talks about making sure that the committee seeks outside funding for everything for almost everything they do in this. Almost, right, exactly. So I mean, if we were to do a plan like that, then I mean, I think that would be a prime opportunity for the bike fed program with DOT. I mean, that's literally what they do, is give out money for that kind of stuff. So that is, I guess, one bit that the committee, or that I can tell that other committees do. The other piece is in terms of making places more safe or friendly. They have a say, at least in Brunswick, and I think in Saco, in the capital planning process, like prior to each budget season, where they're offered an opportunity to basically say like, yeah, okay, your guys are gonna be paving this road this year. But do you have any suggestions, that sort of thing? I don't think we have something like that here, right? I mean, at least until, like Dennis knows sort of several years in advance, like what he's gonna be working on.
Yeah, so for the last few years, it's been challenging.
Yes.
Contractor availability and stuff to get roads done, but it's more of repaving, skidding.
Yeah.
Spin roads. Reconstruction of the road, since I think. But it's something we're probably looking forward to in some areas like Topsham for all.
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't really had that since I began that closeness when it comes to input to paving.
Yeah, right.
Mostly because of situation with COVID. Yeah, that's kind of got at this point.
Well, I'm not saying it's something that we should definitely do. I'm just saying, I identify that as sort of like just a challenge where, like, at what point do we solicit, or does Dennis solicit advice? Like, I guess from my time here, I don't remember him having like a, sending around basically a copy of what he's planning on paving.
Yes.
Yeah, it comes in every budget.
Yeah.
He has a list of the roads that he's gonna accomplish.
Right.
I have the list. That's why I say,
It's not a couple years out, it's the very next year.
yeah,
Which I think as you're talking through stuff, I envision a group. It's almost too late to come to the table come February, March.
Right, exactly.
With those suggestions as the budget's been developed. It almost needs to be a year or two ahead. And that's something, maybe Derek and Dennis can talk, but something's gotta get better, right?
It's capital planning. Dennis has the list of road days of now 5 years or so. I mean, something, so.
That's, if I may interject, that's why Brunswick developed a plan in advance of the actual paving. The idea was, here's what we know we need. And, when something's happening, we'll see if we can implement part of this plan in something. So, I know they took many years to develop that plan. And they've also been a committee for, as long as I've been in Maine.
2016, I think, right?
Yeah, it's only been a few years.
For Brunswick?
Yeah.
Bike pit committee?
Yeah.
No, they were,
I agree with Victor on that because as a member of the Marion Wheelers Bicycle Club, I was working with them early on in the process. We were inventorying all the streets in Brunswick for both walkability and bikeability. This is about 20 years ago. So they may not have the same name that they have now, but the committee working through the recreation department has been in place for 20 years, give or take.
Yeah, there's a lot of GIS work that went into that plan.
And they have a lot more streets and a lot more
Staff.
people and staff. And so I'm not sure that we would ever develop a plan that comprehensive, but there's certainly, I mean, you know, I think we don't need more than, you know, 20 or 30 hours to come up with some real key hotspots that, you know, we really need to look at, to address. And so, and, you know, we've actually got a roadmap of that with NDOT did, with their safety, a public outreach meeting that they did, and people sort of said, hey, this is an issue here and there. I mean, let's start with that. And it's not, I don't think we are looking at, you know, a major expense and a huge consultant, at least initially. I mean, we may discover that, you know, as citizens get involved, that there's more that needs to be done, in which case maybe in 5-10 years we do. But anyway, that's, you know.
That's one of the things that jumped out at me looking at the comp thing, was there were already areas identified. On the map. And in particular, each neighborhood that was surveyed, almost every single one, we need to improve sidewalks, we need to improve pedestrian mobility and safety. Every single one of them, when you asked each neighborhood, identified something about, you know, having a push towards safety as something that was important to them. So that's, I think that all kind of fits into the idea of what would the bike ped committee do. I think they would just help support that idea and that mission. Be a resource, not really a drag to anything, but be a resource to find out what can we get some money from somewhere to help with this? Can we identify if this is the project? How could we think about it just a little differently to incorporate some easy safety features that aren't expensive? There's lots of opportunity for those things as well.
I think, first of all, I think there needs to be more safety in Thompson for pedestrian and bicycle. But I think there needs to be a plan and how we implement it, not just us respond to, like some places we've responded, places wanted sidewalks. So we went ahead and did it. This is a few years ago. But what that did was totally narrow the road because there wasn't room, unless you take people's property, to have both bicycles and pedestrian sidewalks. So I think we need a good plan, and even Brunswick. I drive up to Crystal Springs, Pleasant Hill every Saturday, and there's bicycles and pedestrians. The pedestrians seem okay, but I really worry about people on their bicycles there. I don't think it's a good plan. I don't think they've done a good job with it. It's very heavily trafficked. And Saturdays when they will have their races and when they have, and so all I'm saying is we form this committee, look at all the negatives as well as the positives. And those are my negatives that I've seen, is shortening the streets. And Main Street, I would love to see people more walking. I would like to see more bicycle going. But there's some real problems, and it's going to take quite a bit of money. Like, it isn't only the width, it's the way the traffic's flowing, the lights, and also those manhole covers or whatever you call them, those drainage things. They're horrible when your bike hits that. I've done it. So those are the kind of things that if this committee forms and this goes, there needs to be a lot of forethought, which I know there will because you guys are smart. But when you say Brunswick's done it good, there's some places in Brunswick that's not good. And I fear for some of the people. You
As
know,
a
walking.
bicyclist, I fear for me.
Yeah. So that's all I want to add, but I am in favor. I would love to see more people walking, and I'd like to see more people on the bicycles. I'm in favor of that.
You know, I really agree with you. I think that thoughtless improvements that don't consider all the aspects can actually make things worse. And to do something quick and cheap is not always a good long-term plan at all. And of course, then there has to be a point of balance, because although there are federal funds and state funds and even community and organizational funds available for this kind of thing, you know, these are fairly permanent if something like that is undertaken, it's a fairly permanent thing. And I really agree with you. Poorly thought out infrastructure improvements are not a great idea at all. I mean, I kind of really agree with you with that.
It's reactionary. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I know, that's
Instead
what
of,
you mean.
because there was a need and people came before the board and they petitioned and they did, and, you know, and they have every right to do that. But we reacted to it. We didn't
Right,
say, okay, in 4 years, maybe this could be done,
yeah.
because that isn't what they wanted to hear. So,
Well, and it's a very hard thing to hear because if somebody's been hit by a car or children are at risk or something like that, you know, that's an extremely difficult message to hear. It really is. So there has to be a little bit of balance. But putting in poorly thought out infrastructure, that does not, I agree with you, that's not a very good approach.
One of the things that we heard from different members of the group did research in different ways, and Andrew looked into Bath. Bath has a very different approach than Brunswick, but also Harpswell, you know, quite a lot smaller than we are. And they had a group, I think, I don't know if they have a formal committee, but Dana found out that they actually went out and measured the width of the roads. And that's one of the things in the plan, is to think about different methods of traffic slowing in certain areas. You know, what I'm hearing is a careful but broad approach so that the pros and cons can be weighed. And I think it will be helpful to the town and it will be helpful to CPIC, for CPIC not to be focused on this one area particularly, because it focuses on all of those, and CPIC works with all of the different departments and boards. But to have a group of people who are able to keep their eye on those balls, you know, and work closely with town staff, leadership.
One of the things I don't care to hear is kind of the same direction is what we told the community center building. You know, immediately they came in and we're already talking about hiring a consultant right off the top. And the board said, no, as volunteers, we expect you to put in the time and effort to do this. So to immediately, because in my opinion, if we're going to immediately start paying a third party, we don't need a committee. We can just pay the money, get the suggestions, implement it, right? There's been a number of reports, right, over the years that pedestrian reports have come out, comp plans have come out, and every one of them have had suggestions. There must be in that, what was the title, whatever the one, this current one, there had to be 40, 50, 60 different suggestions in there already established. I would push for, if we put a committee together, that they do the work and we're not immediately looking for any sort of third party. There's enough in front of people today to start working. And if those items that are in all these reports weren't well thought out, why are we going to hire another person to tell us more unwell thought out ideas? I would much rather see a citizen-driven committee than a citizen-driven standby, and we just invest in a consultant. Because there's no point in both when you have all this stuff.
That was my expectation.
Okay.
In joining the group. I figured that we would be researching and doing.
Right.
That's what part of what attracted me is get your hands dirty.
I think we've become not Topsham. I think as people, we you know, we'll come together, but then we'll go look for some expert to do it. Well, when are we happy with those expert opinion? What comes forward, you know, I just think far too often those that volunteer, sorry it takes a little extra time, right? But you expected it. I'm sorry it takes a little bit of extra time for you to, you know, make recommendations, but that's what you're here for. So I'm very hesitant, and I would think I would support, if we move forward with this, that the same message we gave the community center, we give to this group also. There's enough before you, enough work that you can do on your own that you don't need to have a consultant right up front.
I think we have a lot of good experience here before us, and I'm sure there's more. I know Dana has been very active and helping to have us understand the safety and not of the Merrimack Trail riders. I remember when you were doing that, and you did help Brunswick. And I think you and your bike riders, and you all have some expertise you can bring. And I agree, I don't think we need to rush out and get any consultants whatsoever. Consultants cost a lot of money, and that's the first thing we think of as a committee. Sometimes we'll go up and get a consultant, 15,000, 20,000, 30,000. When I think you folks are just as capable and experienced as a committee to do this.
Well, Streets for People, that's a big part of the company. It identifies a lot of positive impact. And I think just having, I don't say just, having a committee that helps keep focus on those things. Bring up, find novel ways of implementing, find novel ways of funding for those things identified in Streets for People. I think that could take an awful lot of time right there without looking for additional.
And you have a lot of resources from the other towns, that you could contact and get, not just their plans, but talk to them and
That has
say,
been very,
right,
very generous. I
And
sat in on some. of
look
their-
at the ones that are the better ones. And
not just in like adjoining towns, but I mean
Right.
nationwide, like there's so many programs for,
Right.
becoming credited as like a, safe walking town, and they're just, there's just so much information right at our fingertips.
Right.
To find, an experts that have already done the work in lots of places to sort of borrow from, and yeah. I agree.
There's a difference between getting a consultant and needing someone to manipulate data. It's a big difference. And unfortunately, I think they get hired just because they can manipulate data for this PowerPoint. Well, that's not what you need. So you really think about what do you need in order to make good decisions from this group. And I think Victor was onto something, because I think there are a finite number of key areas that probably really need attention relative to both bike and ped. And I think a lot of people sitting here probably know where they are. It's probably just confirming it, a little bit more intently, just so that we feel really good about what we're looking at. And then, then think about, what do you need to sort of bring that to life, whether it's looking for money, basically having other discussions relative to what would we do, just start at the top, start their vision side, things. But let's not, just jump and have somebody manipulate data before we really know what we want to do.
There's also a difference between, say, identifying this area has a problem, what the solution is. There are, I've studied this for a while, there are a lot of different ways to handle some of the problems that we have, whether it's a rapid flashing beacon versus raise, whatever it is, bump out, sidewalks, what's the disadvantage and advantage of each one? The committee can go through that. The citizens probably won't have the expertise, won't have sat in as many MDOT seminars as I have on, which of these works in what kind of situations. So, that's something that the standing committee actually can develop some expertise in. There's lots of resources out there, as you said, that we can, use to educate ourselves. And then also think about examples from other towns where this has worked, but, talk to them and say, how did that help? Was that really the best solution, or are you regretting that you did that, kind of thing. And also the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, which also is very much into pedestrian safety these days, has these pilot projects that they run, which, sort of, they don't use hard scaping, they put it in, flexible wires or something, just to see what happens when They did it in Brunswick a few years ago. We tried it in Topsham in Maine on Elm Street where we, added a buffer, just painted the side of the fog lines on both sides. So there was a little bit of a buffered space to see if that would make any difference in the speeds down there. It turned out it made a very minor difference, if any. But that was the cost of a bucket of paint, and say, okay, let's try this and see what happens. So there's a lot of that kind of thing we can do and say, will this work? Is this the best solution here? So I mean, I don't, obviously, if there's a problem at some intersection or on a particular street, it's like, and it's too narrow. What's the best solution here? I mean, maybe there's some creative ideas. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that I think the committee would do, more than just saying, oh, we need to widen the street and we need to do this. It's like, okay, how can we do this within what constraints we have? So anyway.
And I personally would like to see what I prioritize. I don't want to see just at the mall. I don't want to see, because there's many places, there's people ride bikes, and one's the Meadow Road. And that itself is a nightmare. I don't know what we can do about it. But there's many places, if you're going to undertake this, to prioritize what ones you feel should be first, second, third, and, maybe converse a little bit with Public Works and see how but in the neighborhoods, but there's areas that I see people want to ride their bikes, but it's just dangerous, period, dangerous. But so I would prioritize, and I wouldn't pick just certain areas because the neighborhood has had a ruckus or something like that. I would pick what is beneficial most to the town, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. And a good plan would do that. And while I'm on the subject of bicycles and safety, it's just my opinion because I certainly don't know anything about roads. But when you're coming off 196 and you want to turn to go go Main Street by Toyota and them, you can pull over the car in the right lane, but there's also a bicycle lane there. So if you're coming along there and you're gonna make that, I always think, well, what if someone's riding a bike there, I might hit them. Because I just don't like that.
Right.
If I turn right,
Yeah.
correct, and there's still the bicycle lane that's coming here, but a lot of people that's turning right get off a little sooner because it's a bicycle lane to go right. I find that if nothing's happened there, and it probably is perfect, probably somebody did it fine when they thought about it. But myself, when I look at it, I think it could hurt somebody.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm being paranoid.
That's an education issue, actually.
It is.
The bike lane becomes dashed, which means that it's, there's crossing traffic.
Right.
You have to be careful. So I mean, both the bicyclists and the cars need to know what that means and what to do in those situations. And there are lots of other, that may not be the best solution there either. Again.
Sorry to interrupt. We've been talking a lot about, actual like physical changes to roads and streets and, I think that it's important also, communities with more bicyclists have better bike safety and more pedestrians have better pedestrian safety than those that don't. And I think that part of the community could also be encouraging, education and participation. A lot of places I've lived, their bike to work days and, celebrating streets. I used to live in Los Angeles and they shut down major streets and had Ciclovia, which comes from South America, big celebration where, people walk and bicycle. And, just, I think encouraging use of the streets is going to create a safer place for people to use them. And education, just so that bicyclists know what those dotted lines in the bike lane when there's a right turn means. It's empowering for bicyclists and it's empowering for drivers, and I think that could really go a long way. And it's very inexpensive. Education is free. If you have the right.
But you have several things. Did you get several things?
Well, my opening salvo was really about feeling out whether or not we're gonna have enough there for something like this. And it sounds like we do. The
plan part, which I guess we could probably develop in-house within 30 or 40 hours. And I think the prioritization is good. I guess and I'm sorry to get into details here, but I'm just trying to think how this thing would work going forward for all the suggestions that have been brought up tonight. And I mean, it really comes down to working with Dennis and working with the chief, right?
Yeah, I spoke with Chief Reagan, who's on board for maybe one meeting, hoping an hour to 2 hours at most per month to start. He is public safety, he's pretty much the director of that, so I think that's a great start. I think it kind of folds nicely into everything that people talked about tonight. That'd be a good start, and then we can see where we go from there. See how we can integrate into dealing with the roads and sidewalks and such.
Yeah, you seem pretty enthusiastic.
Yeah, he is.
And I see this as long-term, not done immediately.
One of
Piece
the
it.
things I'll say that if the committee comes about is they need to understand, everyone talks about, we understand there's gotta be rails, there's guardrails. Financial is number one, right? There's only so much we can do. And I'll say it up front, and it's the same reason that bike plan that the former assistant planning director came forward with. Plans that come forward with you will, the board will, must. It just, I can say I will not receive it warmly when we're told we must do something. You have to do something. We operate within, we have guardrails, right? There's only so much we can do, we can pay for the tax. So as this committee comes along and they start working with people, things that come forward with must and will towards the board makes the decision on what must and what will be done. And that's the only group that makes that decision on what must and what will be done. The rest are suggestions. So to tell the elected officials what they must do, for me, will be a non-starter. That's why we're here. We're here to make the decisions. That's why we've been elected. And that's what I expect when I'm not here. I expect my elected officials to make decisions. I don't expect it to be written in pieces of paper that say what they must do and how they must handle it, because it doesn't allow me to take on other ideas and other thoughts, but it also creates opposition, because if there's the word you must, and you will, and you can't do it, there's some physical reason you can't do it or whatever it may be, that becomes the paper everybody folds up at town meeting and says, you must do this, you have no choice, and it becomes opposition. So as we do these things, let's remember there are guardrails that the town operates with.
And yet, the purpose of a local government or any government, state or any, is to serve the people who are there. That's its purpose. So I understand your point that, you can't pull money out of thin air or something like that. It's impossible. It can't be done. There are, reality and truths, And yet, the purpose of the government is to serve the people of the town, which is another consideration that can be thrown in the mix at the same time.
But it's all people, not special interest people.
Yes, surely, yeah.
Okay, as long as we understand that, that we're considering everybody, that not just those that it's important to them about. That's what's important. We have to look at a community of 8,000, 9,000 people, whatever the census this year decides it wants to say, and not just a handful.
I think that would be part of the prioritization.
Right.
We're talking about is what are the things where most people have said, yeah, we do, this is important to us.
Yep.
And safety keeps coming up as that. So I think it works pretty well.
Well, I think this committee would anyway come before us and say, in our findings on this first step, this is what we found, and we'd like to see this happen. And I think that's what they'll say.
I'm just saying, we've had a document put in front
Oh,
of
I
us
know.
that was loaded with will and
I
must
know,
about this very same subject,
oh, yeah,
and it's been
And-
rejected multiple
and
times.
other committees.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but all I'm saying, I think they will do it. Now.
I don't want to see a townwide 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. recommendation either.
It's hard.
So I want to see a townwide 25-mile-per-hour speed limit recommendation either. Susan knows what I'm talking about.
Different speeds for different roads, Matt.
Yeah, they specifically said 30 to 20, I think, in the conflict.
Originally it was 25.
Drive like your child lives here, right?
And the greatest part
Take an
is
hour to
those
get to
people that
town.
get pulled over in their neighborhood, when they're speeding, never remembers it's their sign on the front yard as they're flying through. Ask the Heights when they asked for speed bumps years ago, they all got pulled over.
So that's one thing to speak to what Bruce was saying about, like making sure that it's, like the roads are so narrow and stuff. I mean, there's a cost to certain things that might be implemented. And I do think it's valuable to consider, that people don't necessarily want an extra stoplight to cross the 96, or whatever, and I think that, considering, like, I mean, regardless of how many lives it might save, unfortunately. And so considering those people too, playing devil's advocate in the decision making and in what we're pushing. I mean, the bottom line is that the majority of people want safer streets. And so that does come at a bit of a cost. And it's something that needs to be considered.
I think in safety and particularly in those two areas and speeding also, but is it enhances our community. And it shows the caring and that we want these recreations, we want these healthier things. And that's why I support it.
I was with I live right on Elm Street, and with my 2-year-old in the yard who doesn't know not to throw balls in the street. And so I threw a ball in the street. I was holding him, this was maybe for 8 months, and I watched 1 car drive over the ball, 2 cars drive over the ball, 3 cars drive over the ball, and standing there with my, I wasn't trying to like get into the road, which I sometimes, might make a gesture at the crosswalk where they just plow through it. But, I mean, they might not have made the light if I had stopped. But, I mean, that's kind of the what I'm fighting for. It's like, and I don't know what exactly would solve that problem, but.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you say that, and 15-year-old Dave Douglas sitting in his driver's ed class at Donnelly's up here on Upper Main Street, distinctly remember where there's a ball in the road, there's a child, right? So as I'm driving, but that's an education piece that you started talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's not that,
Right,
that's what that is, that's
Right.
education. Because it's something I still remember 35 years later, whatever, 34 years later. But it's where there's a ball, there's a kid. And
Yes.
Sorry, it just,
Yeah,
It
and I don't
speaks
know
to what
would-
you said,
I don't
it's
know what would,
education.
with a sign that says like kids at play, I don't know if that would help,
No.
you have to be aware and alert, and
Yeah.
not everybody is, I'm not always, and, so. it's just-
it's enforcement too.
Right,
A lot of these issues we have are enforcement issues.
Right.
Elm Street will go on a hot streak of having cops sit there and we'll nab people and then we'll forget about it for 4, 5, 6 months. It's been going on since Roland Panett sat there in his old Volvo 25 years ago, just nailing people constantly, but it's an enforcement issue. And if we're not enforcing and we're just driving by some of these things, that's an issue. I mean, Main Street.
But also, and that's so true, because people are so focused on what they're going to do. They're not focused on the day and how pretty it is, or let me gather my thoughts, but I gotta get here, and I gotta get there, and it's our society right now. So the carefulness isn't, it's like, and we do have a duty too. I saw somebody pass a stop school bus, and he was getting ready to stop the bus, and it was on a solid line. I was so furious. I called the police, I got the license plate, and our policeman went right to his place of work. and he heard about it. I think we have to do those things, and going up the Meadow Road, you go the Meadow Road, and then I take a left on Jesse Road, and invariably, they'll come up Upper Main Street, and when you're going to turn on Meadow Road, they're so anxious to get by you, and here I'm trying to make a turn, they're passing. You know, and I've almost got clipped a couple of times, and so have other people there. That is a really bad, I've seen it happen so many times, because they're just going so fast, they don't want to slow down. So it is a safety issue.
And I've had cases where riding down Main Street in Brunswick or Topsham, where I've been badly cut off by somebody that's on a cell phone. I've gotten to the point where people are passing me now. I try to look in their window to see if they're on their phone. And if they are, I'm expecting that they're gonna do something erratic. And so I watch them extra careful. And quite often, they'll cut me off to take a parking spot or to turn onto a side road. So as a bicyclist, I can't be too careful.
I haven't heard any serious opposition here. I think we've got guardrails, at least the need to have guardrails. I guess
We do.
my question would be, what do you folks, and Victor, I'm guessing you're gonna be deeply involved in this.
I'm not sure that's true.
No, really?
I'm already on 2 committees. I mean, I don't know.
So I guess some folks who are interested in being on the committee, what do you envision your first step, like first meeting? What do you envision happening at that?
I would see, starting to put the priorities here. What are things that can be done? What are things that can be done short term, medium term? What are the basic costs? What can be done quickly? Where is there, support, solicit from whoever on staff is helping us, what they would want and what they would need to see, those sorts of things. I think your standard first meeting kind of agenda.
I'd have a suggestion that to read the 11 pages in the comp plan, address this in the 41 strategies. There's 41 strategies identified in the comp plan already just for this topic. That needs to be looked at. I didn't realize that. I'm new to the committee, so I just read it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, they usually start easy to hard too. It's like there's 4 per strategy, and the easy ones are right at the top, and then the harder ones are
Those
towards the
11
bottom.
pages. there's 41.
Yeah. Matt, kind of where you were going, it was what I had written here. In the memo, it was written up to 9 people.
So
That'll have to be a
work.
decision. I just think they're asking for a boondoggle. I think you say 7, and more the merrier. The participation from the public, more the merrier. But when you come to voting people,
7.
I mean, you look at SAT 75 school board with 14 people. If everybody speaks for 2 minutes on a subject, you have 5 subjects a night. You start talking 2.5-hour meetings. So you just want some, keep yourself balanced but actual voting members, I think the more you want to see is that most you want to see.
With most committees, if you set it at 9, you get 6. This one, I'm probably pretty sure that everyone will show up, so
I think they will.
7 should be fine. It's, again, I think the important things is you have an interest in it, you're informed, you know the topic, and I think this should be separate. It's really important. Because you don't want to be haggling about the same thing too much.
And I'll bring it up now. It's something we have to vote and think about so we'll put it on August 18th meeting would be right. Yeah.
Yes.
Nobody's again, okay. Although there's a handful of people here tonight very interested in the group, when we announce this, there could be double that number. And we're gonna, if they put applications in, we interview, and then we have to make decisions. So there's 5 of you here tonight, and we get 10 or 12 applications. Just know not everybody gets on. Not everyone gets the trophy.
You should make sure your application is passed.
No, actually, we used to before this owl thing, we'd all sit and swear all in one area. Now we've got this stuff going on. We used to all be at the same tables. But so that just be prepared. I suspect maybe I'm wrong, probably am wrong, because this is probably who's interested, right? Every committee, it takes forever to ramp up and get people to put applications in. It's just society. So just know if you're not guaranteed because you were here that you have all these applicants.
Well, the elephant in the room. What about horseback riding?
I'll get a committee for that.
And I just say potential people that you would have to be sworn in because you will be appointed by the board.
Well, there's the other thing. This isn't a standing committee.
Oh, it isn't.
Unless standing committees are only appointed. They're put together at town meeting, I believe, have to be approved by town meeting. This is an ad hoc committee until you get to a town meeting where it could be added.
That's true. But then
So-
if there's a beginning and an end, you don't swear them in. If they on
Right.
whatever you swear them
Well,
in.
that's-
But you have to be a.
yeah, there's ad hoc, it doesn't matter, it's no swearing in. In May, we would make it
Right.
a standing committee, and then it would. Hopefully, we just transfer people without reapplying.
And expectations, would we want them to report to us once a month or
No.
once every?
Geez, I'm crow.
right.
They're only meeting once a month.
They just have their meeting with
Well,
us.
I just want to make sure that we do have,
I mean, I don't know,
I don't know.
for a
how-
while, we used to have everybody at least come in once a year. As they ramp up quarterly probably, and then as things just become a running machine, we get to a point of 6 months a year. I mean, we were doing every committee at one point, once a year, so we could at least hear from them. There's some, that if we didn't do that, we didn't know they existed.
Then I thought we went more, but
No, I don't think so. I mean, some that are, some that are moving heavily, we see more often.
yeah.
I mean, I think that's the point, is as recommendations come up, we should be timely about it. So,
Rain's done, let's go home. Is everyone good?
The only thing I would say is, I hear what you're saying, Dave, around decision-making and that critical mass of 7 and too many voices can be. I think there's a lot of work here. And if we were so lucky to have so many applicants, I think that'd be a luxury problem.
I think that right there speaks to what we need to as a group and as a society. Because you're not a board member, doesn't mean you can't help. We can reach out to people and say, we have 7 voting members. We need 15 people to help. You don't have to have, I volunteered for a youth football organization, right? Everybody felt they needed to be on the board of directors. We had 21 board of directors, okay? You don't have to be, you just have to say, hey, this is an interest to you. We've got subcommittees, come be a part of this. I mean, and I think that can be done. It's on the committees. They gotta do it. People just, you don't have to raise your hand and be a part of something.
I think there'll be a lot of interest in this in the community. So I think you will have a volunteer help, maybe not the same people all the time, but I do think there'll be people come forward because anything I'm hearing out there, I think there is quite a bit of interest.
That's what we always do.
Especially when people see our cool t-shirts.
Are you gonna get t-shirts?
We're gonna
See, they
like
already got a
this
budget.
one.
You get Yoda words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Motion to adjourn.
You don't have to. We don't have to.